Let's turn our attention inward and explore the thoughts and emotions that guide our experiences and discover how to live with more awareness and intention. I'm David Dawson, and this is Inner Action. I would say it's been 4 months since I've heard of your story from my friend Ryan, and so I am just eager to get into my questions, but for anyone listening that doesn't understand your story, I think that's going to be just a really important facet to understanding who you are and also giving insight to not only is it a unique story, but also it's a hopeful one. And so that's something that I think is powerful and much needed right now. And so today's guest is Vinney Tolman, and he has not just a near-death experience, he died. It was a death experience, and I am just going to have you kind of start wherever you want to start with that, and then take it to as much detail or as little detail as you want, and because I've got a lot of things that I want to dive into, not just about your story, but who you become after the fact. So
Awesome. Well,
take it. Yeah, you do what you need to do from here on out.
hello to David's audience, to this podcast audience. I'm Vinney Tolman, and I was a little kid. I was known as Todd, which is my middle name. And when I went into middle school, they started calling me by my first name, and I didn't change it because I liked it better. So I am Vincent or Vinny. That's ever since middle school. That's who I've been. And my experience does start, this experience starts with my death. I was taking a supplement, something that was quite popular at the time. This was in 2003. It was a bodybuilding supplement. And it was so popular, it was sold out everywhere. So me and my best friend, we ordered some off of a website in Thailand. And, it took forever to get there. Once it finally came, we were both super excited. We each took our normal dose, which a normal dose of this supplement was just a bottle cap of a liquid. So we measured out our bottle cap. We each took our bottle cap worth. But right away, within seconds of both of us doing that, we knew something was different about this one. We knew it wasn't the same. Later we would find out that this product that we got from Thailand was 20 times stronger than the American stuff. Even though it looked and even smelled the same, it was 20 times stronger. So it was not just too much, it was way too much, fatally so almost. And for me, it was fatal. We both got very nauseated right away and decided, hey, let's go get some food, and hopefully we can feel better after we get some food in our stomachs. We went down to the local Dairy Queen, which is only a few blocks away from his mom's place where he was staying, and we get into that Dairy Queen. We barely make it in the front door. I go into the men's bathroom, and I entered first technically. I went directly into the men's bathroom and locked the door because it was a single-use bathroom. Well, there I lost my consciousness. I passed out, and while I was on my back, I started to vomit, and that vomit suffocated me. I aspirated right there. Meanwhile, my buddy, he came in the restaurant. He collapsed on the first booth as he walked in the door, and started vomiting all over the booth. And the manager of the restaurant got emergency services there, and they hauled him away. But nobody saw us coming together because we didn't. He came in right after me. And so they took him away thinking they had handled the problem. Meanwhile, I went from feeling very dizzy, feeling like the world was spinning on me. And then I remember this loud smack. And I think that loud smack was my head hitting the ground. That's the best I can guess. It was either my head or my hand, but something loud smacked, and then I was not conscious. And the next thing I knew, I was having this gray fog in front of my eyes, and it started getting clearer and clearer. And as it got clearer, I noticed that somehow I was up on like the ceiling of a room, and I was looking down, but it didn't look like I was sitting there floating. It didn't feel like I was floating or anything. It felt like I was sitting in a comfortable movie chair. And previous to this, I had actually worked in TV and film, so I thought, oh, I'm watching someone's film. That is just my instinct. I thought, oh, I'm watching someone's film. And while I'm sitting there feeling like I'm in this comfortable theater, looking at this scene that's being filmed from up above, I I noticed my friend. And where I was, you're not in a place there where you can put two and two together. I just saw my friend. I saw him already passed out. I saw that he had probably just vomited. I saw the manager come over and discover him. The manager had his helper call 911 while he went and was kind of cleaning up my buddy. And I watched them take him away in an ambulance. And as the ambulance left, I tried to go with him, and I made it out into the parking lot. But as it pulled away, it felt like something was tethering me back. It was holding me back. And I didn't quite understand it, but to me, this was just some kind of entertainment experience. So I was invested in my friend being okay, but I was okay. I could feel that he was now past a threshold of danger. Now he was in the right hands. They were going to be able to take care of him. So I just watched. I watched this restaurant, this Dairy Queen. I watched from up above. I watched people, a couple of people come in and come out. I saw this couple ordering get their food, and they were having conversation. And that's when I realized these conversations I thought I was hearing were actually the thoughts of everybody in there. And I could hear everyone's thoughts, even the cook in the back. I could hear every thought that he was having. And that was a weird choice for me, because I thought, why would the director do this? Why would the director have me hearing everyone's thoughts? That's kind of a weird move artistically in the film industry. And again, that's where I was mentally. That's where I was for all this. I'm sitting there thinking, why am I hearing everyone's thoughts? And that's when my attention comes to this dead body in the bathroom. Prior to that, it's as if I knew it was there, but I didn't care. But all of a sudden, it became important to me. And as it became important to me, I noticed that one of the customers in the restaurant, he kept petitioning to open, or trying to open, that bathroom, and he couldn't open it. So he went to the manager and said, "Hey, can you open this bathroom door? I think someone's in trouble in there." And so the manager, hesitantly, didn't want to do it, but he's doing it because this guy was asking him to. He went and knocked on the door. Nobody answered. He opens the door, and there's this dead guy on the ground. I didn't know it was me. I was witnessing all of this. I felt anguish because I was feeling the anguish that everybody witnessing this was. Even the guy who asked the manager to open the bathroom, he was like, "Oh, oh no!" Like he wanted to just leave. His wife wasn't going to let him leave. She was going to make them stay until they kind of found out what was going to happen. But the manager called emergency services for the second time that morning, and second ambulance comes. This one is with three men on the ambulance. It's got two veteran medics and a rookie. And they went ahead. They went in and attempted resuscitation. The body was cold. It was starting to turn cold already. It was cold to the touch when they called 911 originally. So this was a few minutes later even. Um, they they pronounced death, and pronounced a time of death, which was the very moment that they pronounced death on the body. They tasked this rookie with babysitting the body in the back of the ambulance while they got paperwork and witness statements filled out. Um, these two rookie medics were very matter of fact about, or these two veteran medics were very matter of fact about it. But this rookie, it was eating at him that he was sitting here. He had just got through kind of his last bit of training and orientation, and all of this training was flooding his mind. Like, why didn't we try this? We could have done this more. We could have done this more. And he just kept thinking from many different avenues of what he would have done different if he was the one in charge. Um, but he just sat there, kind of feeling bad that they didn't try more. And it was evident there was protocols. The veteran medics, they followed those protocols. They went a little even beyond those protocols and tried, but there was just no sign of life. Um, they went ahead and got those witness statements filled out. They they began to leave the scene, this Dairy Queen where they found the body. And as they did, I noticed that I could leave this time. But silly me, I still didn't know I was watching me. I thought that wasn't possible because me was up here and or me was in this chair. It felt like a chair, and I was watching all of this. So, it didn't even connect that was even possible, that it was me. So I watched as this rookie, he continued to berate himself. Like, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you try this? Or you did hours of training on this. Why didn't you try that? He just, again, was going through these mental exercises of what he would have done differently. And that's when, from where I was, I felt a very loud voice, a very loud energy go over my head where I was sitting. And I could feel it go over me. And I heard really loud, "This one's not dead." And it freaked me out a little bit because it was such a strong, powerful um, domination message. And I looked behind me to see where it was coming from, and I couldn't see anything. It was just all dark behind me. I couldn't see anything. So it was like a mystery to me where that just came from or what it was. And it was interesting. Right before the message was delivered, this rookie medic, he had started to glow. He had almost like a light glowing from him. And after the message was delivered, he even started to glow more, even brighter. And it's hard for us to understand how this glow looks. But when you look at like infrared photography and you look at someone who just went on a jog versus someone who's just sitting there watching TV, the one person who went on the jog is like glowing bright in infrared, right? That's kind of what it was like. Is this rookie was just glowing so bright from the waist all the way to above his head. He was just glowing. And a second time, a message went over my head, and it said, "This one's not dead." The second time the rookie, he reacted. He decided, "I'm going to do this. I got to look for another sign of life. I've got to." So he opens up. He had to undo some straps, by the way, because once a body is pronounced dead and put in a body bag, they strap it down very securely. So he had to undo some straps. He unzipped the body bag. He was feeling around. He didn't feel any sign of life. He had to undo another strap. He felt around further. Still no sign of life. He had to unzip even further, and he went down on the inside of the leg. There's a major artery there, and he was feeling for any sign of life or pulse in that artery. And when he went there, he made contact with the femur bone, the leg bone. And when he did, I jumped because I felt like a spark. I felt like someone shocked me where I was. But I witnessed him do a little jump too. So I knew whatever that was, we both felt it. And that's when I started to understand that there was something odd going on. This was not a movie. This is interactive. This thing is happening, and somehow I'm attached to it. So I watched this rookie with that little spark. He started feeding oxygen into the lungs. He hooked up a defib machine, one of these machines to shock the heart. And he shocked it one time with no result, shocked it a second time, and he did get one single heartbeat, which from what I've learned, can happen even on a dead body. But on the third round of shocks, he got a steady heartbeat. It was faint, but it was steady. It was the boop 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 boop, but very slow. And I could feel just like the excitement come over him. And while he was doing that defib machine, the two veteran medics, man, they were going after him. They were yelling at him. They were telling him he was going to get fired. In fact, the one in the passenger seat had already unbuckled his seatbelt, and he was going to climb in back of the ambulance and come handle the situation. But when that heart started, that changed everything. That medic sat back down. He radioed ahead, and all of that happened just a few hundred feet from a hospital. And the hospital had just opened less than a year earlier. It was pretty close to the time that this happened. That hospital had just opened just before. So here was this brand new hospital. They were equipped. They had the people and the technology ready to take in this body. And I watched them transfer the body. It wasn't out of the woods, not by a long shot. The body went into seizures. It was foaming. It was still vomiting. There was a lot of just disgusting things going on with that body. And I felt so bad for whoever that guy was. I just felt horrible for him. And it was when the body was in one of these seizures, they decided they needed to strap the body down on the hospital bed after they had transferred it over to the hospital bed from the medical gurney. They were strapping it down, and when they did, they went to go strap the left arm last. And when they did, I felt someone strap my left arm. And I remember looking down, thinking I was going to see the armrest of a movie chair with my arm on it. But I didn't. I looked down and I saw the left arm of the body, and I saw a strap on it. And it
Whoa.
freaked me out so much, I broke the strap. Like they got the strap on, but me seeing that, it freaked me out so much. I was like, no, and I actually broke it. Somehow I broke that strap. And this was something I confirmed later. They went and got a thicker strap, one that's made for your legs, and they put that on just the left arm. Later when I brought that up, that freaked out a couple of people because I would have had to have been there to actually witness something like that. But here's this guy. He's got an arm strap on his right arm, a leg strap on his left arm, and two leg straps on both of his legs. And I'm realizing that this is me. This is me. The first thing I think of is, how could I be so dumb? How could I not know this whole time? I didn't even know how long it had been. It felt like it was hours. It wasn't. But it felt like it was hours. From the time they pronounced the body dead and the time that the heart started, it was 47 minutes. And if you add to that the time that my buddy was picked up, that was about another 40 some odd minutes. So it's death for at least an hour, maybe hour and a half, maybe up to 2 hours, depending on how you calculate it. But I couldn't believe that I was so dumb that I didn't know that I was dead. I didn't know that I was sitting there watching my own death. And that's when I started to see all the bad things I ever did in my life. Every bad. And I know in a lot of religion we think that there's this age of culpability, I saw stuff I did when I was like 5. I saw stuff when I did when I was 6. Like I saw anything that I did that I knew was wrong or I didn't know was wrong, but it impacted someone in a wrong way. I saw it through my eyes. I saw it through the eyes of those who it happened around. I got all the way to my 25th year in that life review, if you want to call it that. To me, that was my hell, was watching all the bad that I ever did. And when I got to the end of it, I got to my 25th year of life, and I had this thought, if this is all that I am, why do I even exist? If all I am is this string of bad things, bad emotions, bad influences, why do I even exist? And as I had that question come out of my consciousness, this warmth started to warm me. It felt like a sun came out from behind two clouds and just started warming my back. And then faster than I saw my negative life review, I started seeing my positive life review. And it's like for every one bad thing, there was 10 good things. And it was like so many good things. And I could see even times where I didn't know I was being a good influence or a good impact on someone. I was just being kind, or I got to see it from my eyes, but their eyes as well. And that changed me. That gave me this hope, a total new hope, that I guess there was a reason for me to exist. There was this hidden purpose that I hadn't seen yet. And it was to do all these good things, kind things, the little things and the big things. They were both just as important. From a simple kind gesture to a stranger to dedicating my life to service for 2 years, like all of it was important and just as important as each other. So as I got to the end of watching all of that and seeing myself come to my 25th year, obviously I was 25 years old when this all happened. Um, I then noticed that warmth was getting so strong behind me that I could know that it was love. I could know that it was unconditional love. So I turned around and I could see this man standing there. He was all dressed in white. He had a white beard, longish white hair, a little bit just around the shoulder-ish. And as soon as I saw him, I thought, this is God. This has to be God. And he just smiled, and without using his mouth, he answered me with what sounded like a voice, his voice in my head. I heard him say, "No, son, I'm not God." And, my only follow-up thought was, well, then are you Jesus? Because if you're not God, it's going to be Jesus, right? Or one or the other. And he said, "No, son, I'm not Jesus." He said that my purpose is to be here to help you, to guide you. And he did explain that his friends, his family called him Drake, and I could call him that if I wanted to. And so I met this man, and he explained that he was my guide, and he was going to take me wherever I wanted to go. He motioned back to my body, and I don't know if it was synchronistic or not, but when he motioned back to my body, the body had just vomited a bunch of stuff up, and it was nasty, just total nasty. And it was strapped down. It was starting to choke again, so they had to go and do some things. But right as he said that, I can take you back to your body, that happened. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go back there. And so he said, well, I can take you anywhere you want to go. Where do you want to go? And I thought about it, and all of these hypothetical options were just popping into my head. And then I realized, I'm like, wait, that warmth that he was putting on me, I could tell it was coming from him, through him. That warmth, where's that coming from? And so I asked him, I go, I want to go wherever that love, that warmth that you were sending to me, where does that come from? That feels to me like the living waters. That feels like the living light, the living love. I want to go where that comes from. So he explained that that was coming from my home and his home, and that he would love to take us both there. So we began this journey, and I could talk for hours just about the journey. I really could. I could talk for hours just about getting to heaven. I did get to a heaven realm. There's many, more than your brain could comprehend, more than your imagination could create. There's heavens. And this was the kind of the train station of heaven, where all of us will go to achieve certain things and get ready for what's next, next in our own soul evolution, in our own soul progress. And this is the heaven that we all talk about in churches and religions. But it's just a train station, but it gets to be what we need it to be. I got to go there and see it, see what it is, and see what it's made out of. And it's made out of just unconditional love for us. And I received a healing there as I experienced just the grass. I received a healing. As I experienced the trees, I received a healing. As I experienced the flowers, I received a healing. But the greatest healing I got was from the water. As I experienced the water joined me. It became part of me for a few moments, and it just stitched up my soul. All the places where life had torn my soul or torn trauma into me, it just really stitched me up. And I was just so enamored with this place. I was getting excited about this building there. Um, uh, Again, I could talk for hours just about that building even, but I was getting so excited about, I wanted to go to this building. That was my next thing. I knew that was my next thing. And I started making my energy move towards the building, because there, just having the thought, you could move yourself just with thought. And so I was using my thought to try to move myself towards the building. And Drake, my loving guide, he kind of like sidled up to me and put his energetic arm around me. And he said, Vinny, this is going to be really hard, but it's going to be worth it. And then he gave me my favorite thing about heaven. My absolute favorite thing was this hug. Because in that hug, I felt how much my creator loved me. Even though I didn't see Drake as God, I don't think I would have allowed myself to go with God. Not at that time in my life. Um, I was not such a good guy at that time in my life. I was trying to be. I had just started cleaning up my life when all this happened. And I got to feel how much our creator loves us. I got to feel that life here is not a trial. Life here is a reward because we already made it through the trial. Even though we get kind of pissed that it doesn't feel like a reward, to our soul, this is a reward. We chose to come here. We choose to stay here. And we choose to learn here. We're here as a classroom, not as a courtroom. And we're here to learn to create, learn to master our energy, learn to master our thoughts, learn to be the creators of our own reality. Because if we can change our perception, we can change our world here. Every day in this world on earth, we can all walk into a person who thinks the world is ending, and 30 seconds later, walk into a child who thinks the world has just begun. Both are correct because it's our thoughts that create that reality. And I learned the power of that as Drake was giving me this hug. I learned the power of this love that's for all of us. And that I could be the most perfect person on earth. And I couldn't even earn 10% of that love. I couldn't earn 1% of that love. That love is being given to us because of what we did before we got here, because of who we are before we got here. We can't earn that love. It's already given to us. And as I was feeling this bliss, this powerful bliss, I then started to hear a blessing being given to my body. My brother, meanwhile, I'd been brain dead for 3 days. And my brother had come in my hospital room, and in a moment of authenticity, my brother, he doesn't remember this part, but he got a little freaked out because the hospital said, it's time to start making a decision. Do we want to keep him on life support? If you do, you've got to look into palliative care, which is like a nursing home for a kid in his 20s. Like, no. My brother knew he didn't want me in a nursing home. He also knew that there had to be a higher purpose with it. So he said this blessing over my body. He proved to me the power of prayer. And when he closed that blessing, he did so with love, and not just love of me, because we're only 2 years apart, so we sometimes we're oil and vinegar with each other, but he loved who I was for my mom, and he loved that my mom needed all of her kids, and that's who he was praying for, is for our mom, so that I'd be okay. And at this point, she didn't know anything yet. She was out of town. She didn't know anything till it was all over. Then all of us told her about it. um, so when he finished that prayer, I felt immediately that I was pulled back to my body. And it was just about, my brother gave me that blessing at just after 10 p.m., just around 10 p.m. And then I woke up at 11 p.m. Or sorry, 1:11 a.m. Sorry, 1:11 a.m. And when I woke up, I instantly pulled everything off of me. I pulled all the diodes off of me, the sensors, pulled a catheter out of me. I had breathing equipment on me. I was on full life support. So the heart was the only thing that was working unassisted. All the other stuff was under assistance. So I took all that assistance off of me. And I just stood there in that room. I couldn't even have the hospital gown touching me. And I didn't know what happened. When I woke up, I had an amnesia of sorts. I didn't know what led me to there. I'd remembered taking the supplement. I had vaguely remembered getting to the Dairy Queen at that point. And I did remember getting into the bathroom and feeling the world get really dizzy. That was my last memory. And the next memory I had, I was waking up in this hospital. So for about a little bit over a 24-hour period, I didn't know that I had an experience, but I did know I was extremely claustrophobic. And claustrophobia was not something I ever experienced in my life. Being out in Utah where you are, I used to go to Nutty Putty Cave all the time back when you were allowed to. And you can't do that and be claustrophobic. And it was amazing to me that I had this claustrophobia and I didn't know where it came from. Well, I was going to leave. I grabbed a hospital gown, wrapped it around my midsection, and I was about to leave the hospital when I heard the nurses scream. They decided that no, they weren't going to let me leave, and I complied. I stayed there. Um, Again, I woke up at 1:11 in the morning, but at 7:30 in the morning, I checked myself out. My discharge papers were signed, and I was checked out at like 7:28 a.m. that morning. 3 days after, 3 full days. I died on the 18th, and I got out of the hospital on the 21st. And that was an experience and a half. About a day and a half later, my sister had taken me to dinner and with her family and my other sister. And she cornered me and asked me, she said, Vinny, she's like, you were dead. Everyone said you were dead. Did you see anything? Did you experience anything? She's always been kind of our mystical one in our family. And my brain formed the word no. And I was going to say something snarky like, no, idiot, leave me alone or something, just like a brother would, a younger brother who's bigger than her. Um, and I went to say that, but what came out of my mouth was, yes, I met a man who's all dressed in white. His name's Drake. He's my guide. He took me to this place, and I got about just minutes into the description, and then I just started to weep. And I was weeping for two reasons. One was I was thinking in my mind, what the hell? How could this be in there? And I didn't know that. Number two was I felt deep ache, this deep ache. Like, why did I get taken out of there? Especially feeling now what earth life is like compared to there. Like, why would I have chosen to come back? I just felt so wrong. I felt like a major victim. And it took me a while to decompress that. It did. But I kept hearing Drake. One of the fringe benefits is after I remembered what happened, all of a sudden I had Drake. He was always talking to me. He was always saying things. I even went and talked to a doctor about it. Doctor didn't know what to do. He referred me to another doctor, and the other doctor had this idea about putting me on some prescriptions. I delivered a little message from spirit to him, and he ripped up those prescriptions and said, "Get out of my office." Like, it was quite an ordeal trying to figure out what this was. And finally, I realized that this wasn't something that medicine or science was going to figure out for me. I needed to figure it out for me. And I've always had good instincts. Raised how I was, I had a strong survivor instinct in me. And so I just started leaning into those instincts. That's what I called it in the beginning, was instincts. Later, I felt more comfortable calling it intuition. And then even later, I felt more comfortable calling it what it was, and that's spirit communication. And that's the world I've been living in for 22 years since. Yeah, this last January 21st was 22 years, um, and now what I do for my living is I help other people change their perception, to change their reality. I help them take the past and reprocess it with a heavenly view. Help them see the blessings, help them see the silver linings, even on the darkest clouds. I help them leave trauma where it should be, and that's in the rearview mirror. And I chip away at those speed bumps that we call trauma and help people get out of their own way, stop their patterns of self-sabotage, heal, and ignite their light. And in the process, some people, when if they want it, they also activate their own premonitions, their own intuitions, their own communications with spirit. And it's a tremendous field of work. And I can thank about 1,000 different people who nudged me into it. I was doing this work for years unofficially before I started doing it officially. And I can say that I'm very blessed to be connected enough that it impacts a lot of lives, thousands of people's of lives with that I've been able to work with one on one. And I'm so grateful that I've been blessed to be able to do this. But that's my story. That's, one of the neat little concessions of all this. I didn't know who Drake was for the longest time. And 6 months later, I was in a little town in Wyoming for a reunion. And I saw this historical presentation on the town. And one of the first clergy in that town was this man called Charles Drake Kazare. And it confused me though, because it didn't say Drake on his name, it said Charles. So I went to my grandmother and I asked her who was a Kazare, as her maiden name. And I asked her who is this Charles Drake Kazare, and she said, "Great Grandpa Drake. He's pretty important in our family." And that was it. I knew at that point that this experience was not some delusion, and I've truly seen, I'd say, close to about 10,000 confirmations since, at least. And that's on the short side of of that experience not just being real for me, but being foundational for what I do now, and how many ways it's impacted other people's lives.
I know we could get into like hours of this conversation,
Oh
but
yeah. I could do hours about the grass in heaven. I really
uh,
could.
well, yeah, I have some specific things though, because am curious from the standpoint of coming back, realizing finally what you experienced, then having this feeling of despair of if would be, that be an accurate just like why am I back here?
Devastating despair. Yeah.
So for someone that is listening that knows someone or is going through themselves a period of depression or despair, how have what have you done or what advice would you give someone from your perspective that has helped you and people that you've talked to?
My For someone who's in the state of despair, first I'd say choose a different state. And if we can't get out in front of ourselves and choose a different state, then we've got to start by changing our state of being. And, too many of us, we look at a life path or a life habit and we say, well, I want to live this way, but I don't want to feel this way. That doesn't work. You're feeling this way because you're living this way. So let's take something small. The smallest thing that we do every day is breathe. If you change your breath, you can change your universe.
Hmm.
You'd be surprised when you study or go look at the science of depression. When you're depressed, you shallow breathe. When you shallow breathe while you're sleeping, they call that sleep apnea. So you're waking apnea if you're depressed and awake.
That's good. Waking
So choose
apnea.
choose to change your breath. Something that I practice every single day is when something comes to me that is an inducer of stress, I will take 3 breaths before I process it. Believe it or not, those 3 breaths are a barrier or a shield that keeps me from getting emotional in a negative way about almost anything. The hard part is to train your mind to insert those 3 breaths first. It takes a little bit of training. So here's what you do is start the 3 breaths before you need them as a regular habit. Then it becomes an instant reaction when you need it. But breath is one of my favorite things because what is a flower? A flower. What are we? We flow air in and out of us. One of the oldest words for God is Yahweh. Yah is inhale, that's feminine. Way is exhale, that's masculine. And Yahweh is an androgynous name for God. It doesn't take masculine or feminine, never did. And it's like Yahweh. So Yahweh, Yahweh. The first thing you do when you're born is you will say God's name. The last thing you do before you see God is you will say God's name here with your breath. No wonder stress steals our breath. No wonder our breathing, our flowing gets shallow when we're under stress. Cortisol does this the same. It kicks us into shallow breathing. Sometimes all we had to do was force the self to breathe, and cortisol starts going down. That's all we need. That's all we do. We can lower cortisol. We can lower blood pressure. We can slow or increase heart rate with our breath. We can raise and lower our temperature of our body using our breath. Why is it this magical tool that's been at all of our fingertips our whole lives we're not learning about until now? There's a reason. There's a reason.
Because
We all live in a system that we inherited. We never ask who built the system. In most countries, you wake up, you go to work to earn money, to pay bills, to spend a little bit of time with your family. That's not the best system. And as increased income comes in, the instinct for most people is to increase the outcome, increase the outgoing, live exactly in the means, right? Or just beyond. That's not a good system. When I came back from my experience, I realized I was living in a prison. I didn't own my own time. I didn't own my own energy. My job owned that. My bank account owned that. My obligations owned that. That if I wanted freedom, I needed to first free myself here in my holiest of holies, my temple. And if I could free myself here, I could start to figure out how to free myself out there. And that's what I've been doing for 23 years since. It's been awesome.
I bet. I, okay. So here's an angle I'm interested in. I want to share a personal story, but after I ask this question, from your perspective, has man made God in its own image, or have we been made in God's image?
So what's funny is the idea of God. We look in the mirror to create that. We look in the mirror to create that. But to know God, you look within to know that. To know God, you go inside where God is, inside all of us. Our soul is a spiritual DNA, an energetic DNA. So if you look to this story, okay? On Earth, 15 times, maybe 16 times, one time is debatable, but 15 known times on Earth, there was a being that was brought to Earth. They were born of God, who came birthed out of a virgin. They served the world for most of their life. They were scourged and crucified in their 30s. only to be crucified and die and arise 3 days later. 15 times you can find that on earth in 15 different eras. And if you add Egypt in there, possibly a 16th. Why do you think that's so important? Because that's our salvation. That's where Christ is our key. Christ is the one who's called himself the way shower. He is the Lion of Judah. He is the one who shows us the way. And a man who has so much pride that while he's being crucified, he begs for forgiveness for those who crucify him. That's the love God has for us. That's the love God has for us. And that's undeniable. When you tap into it, that's undeniable. You know it, you feel it when you tap into it. Our
Hmm.
Creator is much bigger than what our human brains can comprehend. But the best way to know it is look at Christ or look at your inner Christ. And where does your inner Christ arise? For me, being a parent is where it rises up in me. I will give anything for my kids. Anything. Truly anything.
Do you think we're often missing the mark by worshiping Christ versus what his words are pointing to?
To me, worshiping him as an example is what he meant. Worshiping him as a man is what the wrong forces want. Because if I worship him as a man, all the power of salvation is outside me. If I worship him as an example, the powers of salvation are inside my temple. And what was one of his favorite parables? Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. He's the way shower. He's the example. He is the way.
I share my experience that I had recently.
Let's hear it. I'm
Okay.
excited.
So for me, and anyone listening to my podcast is like, this guy's talking about psychedelics again, but it's been a very powerful tool for me to access my spirituality and get outside of my own head. And so I had a guest on here recently who has a legal mushroom therapy wellness center. And so I wanted to document what that whole process would look like from start to finish and record it all.
Uh-huh.
And just so that people that are interested in utilizing this as a tool to access themselves on a deeper level, that they would have a more accurate depiction of what that would be.
Uh-huh.
And whenever you do something like this, they always want you to come in with a certain intention. And the intention that one of the intentions I had was I wanted to experience the infinite intimate, which is God.
Uh-huh.
And I was not prepared on how that would unfold in that experience. And one of the ways that, and the two other things I wanted was I want more expression in my life, and I would love to be out of my head and more in my body. And in this experience, it was such an intense and powerful experience that words won't do it justice. But I try my best to articulate in a manner that can offer an inkling of the experience. And so, one, it was complete experience in and of itself. Not only was it an experience, I was the experience.
Yeah.
And number two, not only was I experiencing the infinite uh, and intimacy of what it means to be human and to be alive and to experience beyond myself, I began to realize I'm experiencing God by experiencing myself.
Yeah. You're an
And
expression of God
yeah,
experiencing God. Yeah.
yes. And it blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like completely all of the mental constructs that I had of God being separate from me, that one day I could become like a God or whatever. Um, it was just like, no, you're already it.
Yeah.
You are a part of it.
Allow that part of God to arise in you, activate and start guiding the ship.
Yeah, and
That's huge.
it was well, and so to me that was just a very, I mean, it was embedded into my cells. Like there's no way I cannot forget
You
that
can't,
type of
yeah, you can't
experience.
unsee or unexperience God's actual love. You can't.
Well, you know what's fascinating between your experience and other NDEs and whatnot that was different from mine, because I've been comparing mine, which was one, the amount of downloads, like it's just telepathy, just like instant downloads of information, etc. But the one thing that I experienced when I was in that state or dimension or whatever you might want to call it is I was very, it was not home for me, because, and I don't know if it's because I was still in my body and not technically dead, but it was more of like, hey, be grateful that you have this experience to peek behind the curtain of Oz for just a
Uh-huh.
moment. And the whole time I was there, I was so wanting to be back in my body to utilize this as a catalyst to be able to experience life on a whole new level.
Well, imagine the first time you rode your bike. Well, put your mind back there. Imagine the emotions the first time you got on a bike. There was hope, there was danger,
The anticipation. So,
anticipation,
yeah.
and now fast forward a little bit. Remember the first time you rode your bike fast and you felt the exhilaration on top of all those other feelings. And then after maybe a summer of that, all of a sudden that bike felt like home. And that's what it's like in these bodies. Our ego convinces us we are only these bodies, but we're not. We're the electricity inside these bodies. We are, ego is the acronym of edging God out, because the way it looks to me is the soul is this silver cord extending out of God. And the ego is the rock it tied itself to. And if we ignore the ego, we'll cut it off and just retract back up where our soul comes from, God. But for this to work, we have to balance it out with the ego, but not let the ego take charge. We get to take charge. We get to take charge.
I feel fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had thanks to the tool of a psychedelic to actually like I could understand that intellectually before, be like, okay, that makes sense, but how come there was a disconnection for me? But now
Uh-huh.
after having this particular experience, that hits home so much more. But I also I'm um, want to acknowledge that that has been my path, and there's so many people that have so many other gifts that they can connect to God or themselves on a level that maybe I have yet to find. But because I can understand if someone's listening to this and they're like, this sounds great, but it's not hitting home at all.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone that
I'd
is
say
struggling?
tap into that intuition, because that's going to help you find God where you're supposed to find God. I can go to a desert and find God in a little wild cottontail rabbit as it thrives and bounces from tumbleweed to sagebrush. I can find God there. I can find God in the red rock cliffs of southern Utah. I can find God in a little stream up Provo Canyon. I can find God in the Uintas. I can find God cracking fossils out of rocks at the top of the Uintas, helping us know that our earth is always changing. But what I love is when we're tapping into that intuition, we can find God everywhere, but it's not going to work for us everywhere. It's going to work for us first in certain places. Some of us that's in churches. Some of us it's singing hymns. Some of us it's meditating. Some of us it's praying. Some of us it's serving each other. Some of us it's breathing. And breathing is a great place to anyone to help find their Yahweh, their Abawun. Abawun is the name for God that Yeshua or Christ used. And to me, those are my two favorite names for God is Yahweh, which means the heir that can't be named, or Abawun, which is father womb, father birther.
I want to give you some kudos and part of your story that you didn't address, which I completely understand because of time. But when I first listened to your story, and I encourage anyone that is wanting more details, there's plenty of
Oh yeah, there's like
Vinny,
100. So
Vinny
there's
on
a lot of them
YouTube.
out there. Been
But
doing it for years now.
the one that has had me thinking and has impacted me the most of your story is as you're entering the different I don't know, the levels of, because there's, was it 7 different things that you had to
So
learn?
10. So I assumed growing up in the church, very strict household. I thought, oh, and I had just started cleaning up my life. I thought I get that VIP door for us good uns, to get into heaven. And Drake was like, nah, it's not like that. We're gonna learn a little something first before we go in. And so he started with me one principle at a time,
Principle. Okay.
and he led me through 10 distinct principles. I was sharing my story for years without knowing it was 10. Um, but it was in writing it in the book that we realized, we're like, oh, there is 10 principles here. It's like, oh yeah, there is
Oh,
10.
fascinating. So it's the second, I think it was the second principle, which is you have to be, you can't be prejudiced. Was that the second one?
So
Or,
prejudice is the sixth one.
oh, the sixth one. Okay.
But
Man,
you know
I'm
what
way
though? The
off.
way that it worked, and you'll understand this because your experience level is perfect. I can have a conversation with you at a level that you'll understand. All of these principles came together, and it took me energy and time to unpack them,
Mm.
to unpack the download, right? And so it was essentially the sixth step of unpacking that I found this release all prejudice. And I was born in a family that we had two races, and I didn't get both races obviously, but my sisters were of a different race than I was, and so I felt like I didn't have any prejudice when it came to the racism prejudice. But then Drake asked me, he said, well, I love that you don't think you're prejudiced, but what do you think about prejudiced people, or what do you think about racist people? I was like, oh, I rose to this high victim energy, and I pointed my finger. Racists are bad, prejudiced people are bad, they're so closed-minded. And as I was speaking and saying that, like in my energy, Drake gave me this little cartoon of Vinny over here thinking he's not prejudiced, and all these racist, prejudiced people over here. And he lifted me up and he brought me over and he put me down on the prejudice side. And he's like, oh, so I see your prejudice against prejudiced people. And I was like, I mean, the mind blowing thing that happened to me was like, I'd never thought of it that way. And why? Because I had thought prejudice was something to divide us. But no, it's something I choose to divide me from something or someone else.
So when I
And that,
heard that, oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
that was
When
a
I,
mind blower for me.
so I
All of a
loved,
sudden, I had to be empathetic even to prejudiced people. I didn't have to accept them or condone them,
yeah.
but I had to accept who they were as they were and love them in their broken state.
So when I heard that, I instantly was like, okay, in what ways am I being judgmental? Because that's how I started to look at it, is more, from a judgmental side. And the best example I had was, okay, in my relationship with my wife, I will often judge her judgments of certain things, but the way I go about it is much more subtle, much less outwardly, and more cunning.
Yeah.
And and for so long, I would be like, I don't understand why you're acting the way that you are and why you're saying these things. And there would be like a disgust or just like I'd be put off by this. And then I realized, wait, I'm being judgmental of her judgment. And just because I'm being a lot less outwardly expressive doesn't make me any better, which leads me into a part of something you said, a quote. It says, being kind is far more powerful than being correct.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that?
Well, we don't realize that our outside world is only a mirror image of our inside world. So if you wake up every day and you decide, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, stop pointing that energy outward and say that looking in a mirror, because that's what's going on. Um, and it's like if we can understand that we hold all of our solutions and we can't outsource our problems anymore. They're all our internal problems. Because think about it in life. If someone comes up and accuses you of something and you're not guilty of it, it doesn't bother you at all. You're like, whatever, that's not me. But if you've already accused yourself of that internally, and someone outside tells you you've done that, you trigger. That's not me. Why are you saying that about me? And it's like, so we live in this world where we don't understand that that our solutions and our problems are all inside of us, not outside of us. And if we can learn to put a kindness filter on us, many times we are knowingly going to restrain our rightness, not righteousness, rightness, because it's kind. And just because we're right on a principle, the higher principle is to be kind. Because when we're kind, we're taking that right principle and moving it forward for both the individuals involved.
One thing I want to make sure we distinguish between kind and nice. What would be the difference for you? I have mine, but I would love to
So
hear your perspective.
so there's a way to be truthful with kindness. There's a way to be truthful with vindictiveness too. And sometimes we find that we've got truth, we've got rightness, and we convince ourselves that that's righteousness, and it's not. Correct is not righteous. Christ is righteous. Was Christ correct?
I interpret nice too, and I would say Christ was kind, he wasn't nice.
You're right. I
Because
feel
I
like
would
he was
say
kind.
nice means that you don't have boundaries. Nice means
Yeah.
you can be, taken advantage of, and you can be vindictive, but
So
be,
there's two types of nices though. There's nice because you radiate kindness. Then there's nice because you feel empty inside. You're trying to fulfill yourself by serving others.
Hmm.
And that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
By overgiving. Yeah. When you haven't put your oxygen mask on, stop putting them on others. Make sure you get in there, you get your own breath, and then help other people with their
We're both middle-aged, and something
breath.
that I,
Approaching upper middle aged.
yeah. So something you brought up that I really have been thinking a lot about too is overjoy.
Uh-huh.
And how, as an adult, often we sabotage ourselves from experiencing it more.
Yeah.
What is overjoy, and what advice would you give?
So there's a great thief in your life. Okay. He or she will roam around your life in a disguise and take every opportunity for joy for you away from you. And that thief has a very distinct name. And that thief is expectation. Remove
That's good.
expectation and you own all your joy.
That's really
All one
good.
ounce of it, all 1,000 ounces of it. You own your joy if you release expectation from you. Many people will only do good if expectations in the room. But when you can do good without any expectation around, just because you're radiating goodness or love, radiating self-love, no less, then you get to have more joy than anyone else. I can find about as much joy from a good cold cup of water than a trip to Disneyland, than a retreat, diving into meditation or um, but truly my greatest joy is helping people. I do find a lot of joy in that. But
Isn't
I
it?
had to learn quick. Don't invite expectation. You invite expectation, he'll be quick to steal what joy is there and not even let you see it. Like you won't even be able to see the joy that is there for you to hold and to experience because expectation will very quickly grab it and swipe it off the table.
I love that.
So kick expectation out of your gang, off your
But
team.
then, are we being prejudiced against expectation? I mean, come
Well,
on.
expectation, if it
I'm
was a
kidding.
figment of the eternities, yeah. But expectation is a human thing. It's like putting light into the universe, but making sure you send it with walls. Well, as soon as it hits the wall, it stops. So that's what expectation does. It's a limit. Expectation is just a limit. Yeah.
Because we're short on time, I do want to ask this one final thing. What is the number one thing that you are helping people with that you feel is most needed right now?
The biggest thing for me is to help people understand. I get asked almost every day. Uh, People ask me, Vinny, are we going to be okay? And my answer is, I'm okay. Are you okay? Yeah, we're. The thing is, we were okay before we came here.
Well, the thing too is we're in the habit of always wanting an answer from someone outside of ourselves.
We're trying to find our superheroes. And why are we so? Um, why does the world love the superhero? Uh, because the superhero is an outside solution. Who are your real life superheroes in your life? And I don't mean really, I mean perspective. They're the ones who give you jobs, give you academic uh, acumen or degrees. It's all of these outside forces that are your salvation. When all along, as a brand new baby, you had everything you needed to be happy already. Everything. You didn't need any more money. You didn't need any more food. You didn't need any more car or house. You can find happiness with what is. So find happiness there and then start letting life grow. Stop trying to outsource your happiness into some solution or some superhero, some outside savior.
Thank you.
I love the work that you do or you're doing, even the study that you're doing, because for thousands of years, the mycelium have been part of the magi. And here, without doing any, plant medicine, we can do the greatest plant medicine is up here in our eye magi nation. That is where we begin our healing. That is where we begin our changing our minds, changing our perceptions, is starting in the imagination, the eye magi nation. And the
Hmm.
mycelium itself has been healing animals, been healing trees. There's there's huge networks of trees that they're connected through the mycelium. And that mycelium carries a pulse. The earth carries a pulse through that mycelium. That means it becomes a neural network for all of these organisms. I've watched veterans on the brink of suicide save their lives illegally at the time with microdosing psilocybin, golden teachers. And they did it because their doctors are like, none of the prescriptions are helping you. And I know about this study, and there is a lot of those studies that show the psilocybin, but because it's nature and it's hard to copyright nature and make it a poisonous chemical, it doesn't get turned into a farm that sort of kills you, or a pharmaceutical. That's why we don't see it from our prescribers. That's why we don't see it from the pharmacists. Because it comes from nature, it comes from God, it comes where all good things come. It's where mankind gets in there and messes it up. That's where stuff gets dicey. But we'll put poison in our body every single day, maybe 8-10 times a day, because it's over the counter. Whereas someone can truly battle some of their obstacles in life, truly battle them and win using nature's tools. So I feel like you're on the tip of that spear, where you're changing the mindset, you're changing the modality, and you're opening up options. And when there's as many options as possible, you help activate the master within you. And you stop trying to outsource that to some other master outside you. So thank you for the work you're doing.
No, thank you for your
I
time.
I highly appreciate anyone in that arena, because, you know, in traditional society, it's not like they put people like you up on a pedestal. Not yet, right?
Well, I don't want to be on a pedestal. That means I get arrows pointed at me too, but
Oh, you're getting the arrows already, but I'm sure you are. But you know what, though? For this battle, I'd say it's a battle of light. It's important that everyone have all the solutions on the table, and that some of them aren't hidden from them because people can't make money on it. And that's why sarsaparilla is illegal. The root. Yeah.
and
Lots of
well,
stories like that in our world.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for spending time today, and at some point too, I'd love to have you back on so that we can get into a little bit more
Absolutely.
nuances with things.
Yeah,
But
you could get some questions going from the audience, and put it together and set it up. That would be fun. I'd
okay,
love it. Yeah.
I'd love to have you back on. So thanks so much, Vinny.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for
Yeah,
all you do.
yeah, you're welcome.